So yes, thanks for joining us this afternoon for February's Community Transformation Monthly webinar. I'm Simon Fielding and I'm one of the communications officers supporting the Community Transformation Programme. It's great to be with you this afternoon for the webinar today, where we're going to be showcasing our work in collaboration with people with lived experience, peers and carers. And we've got a variety of speakers today, which was, going to share their stories. Tasha Bearfield is from Possibility People, lived experience coordinator. We were hoping to have Millie from Brighton and Hove League. Unfortunately, Millie's not very well, so Red Fletcher is stepping in for us on that. We'll hear about Millie's story shortly. Annabelle Coyle-Stewart is the Engagement and Support Officer for Sussex Partnership, and Gabe Poll as well, Volunteer Support Officer at Sussex Partnership. So as I say, a variety of speakers to fit into this half an hour session. I will just go through a bit of housekeeping before we start. To turn on any live captions that you might need, click the three dots at the right hand side bottom corner of the screen. You'll be able to enable live captions and subtitles. There will be 15 minutes for question and answers at the end of the session. Do submit your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. All participant cameras and microphones have been turned off for this webinar. So if you do want to get in touch with us, as I say, use that Q&A chat box at the bottom of the screen. And the webinar is being recorded as well. It will be added to the Community Transformation YouTube playlist. So you'll be able to watch back again in case you missed anything or in case there was any clarity needed over any points made today. Feel free to watch back on YouTube later on. And a summary of the topics covered in the webinar will be emailed to everybody watching afterwards. And we also ask, if you can, please complete the short survey, which will be emailed to you, just to let us know what you think of the webinar and how we could potentially make it better for future months. Just to recap then what we've covered so far in as part of our Community Transformation Programme, November 22, that was very much about the background to the transformation of community mental health services for adults and older people in Sussex. December then, the development of the emotional wellbeing service and the next steps around that. And then January, we kind of recapped all of that and then looked ahead to 2023. Don't forget, all previous webinars can be watched back by scanning the QR code on your screens now. We'll just leave that there for a short while, so if you want to scan through that. And don't forget, every webinar is also on our Community Transformation YouTube channel. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Tasha, who's going to talk us through the agenda.
Hi everyone, it's great to have you with us. So today we're going to do in half an hour, so it's a bit of a push, but what we can do around explaining what we think co-production is and how we use it in our work, how important it is, what are the benefits of co-production, how we as Possibility People as an organisation have engaged and supported people with lived experience, what we've done so far with the Community Mental Health Transformation Programme. We're going to have a couple of people talk to us about their own personal lived experience of their involvement with us. And then I'll pass over to Sussex Partnership People Participation Team for them to talk a bit about their EBE programme and their peer support as well. We'll bring it back at the end, recognising some of the challenges of our work, and then it will be opportunity for us to answer some of the questions. Next slide, please, Simon. So I just put together, there are lots of different definitions of co-production, and for us, these two had some words in them and some sentences that we felt were really important to our work. So for us, co-production, when we're doing it, is not just a word, it's not a concept, it's a meeting of minds coming together to look at a shared solution. And it's really about involving people from the start to the end of a project, as opposed to some other types of participation. And it really is about coming together in partnership at the early stages of service design, development and evaluation as well. It's really crucial that we don't just involve people in one element of our service redesign process, that they are integral to all of the parts of that process and development, all the way through to evaluation as well. And we know that people with lived experience are best placed to advise us on what exactly helps to support them and the services that they need to make a positive difference in their lives. And that underpins a lot of what we do with co-production. Next slide, please, Simon. So I just put this in here. Some of you may have seen this before, but it just differentiates what's different about co-design and co-production. So it's not to invalidate any of the other methods of participation. They're also incredibly valuable. Educating, informing, consulting people have been used and are very important. And we don't want to say that those aren't the right methods for engaging people, because they are. But if we're talking about co-production, it's a very different type of relationship when we're working alongside service users and people with lived experience and carers. And it's really about working alongside them in an equal and reciprocal partnership. And some of that is about giving away some of the power of decision making, which is very different to informing and educating at the other end of the ladder. Next slide, please, Simon. Yeah, so I explained a little bit about it's really important when we work with people, we're equal partners and co-creators in the redesign process. And it's about taking them with us on that journey. It's about them being part of decision making, them having a role in delivery of services, them having a role in evaluation and monitoring as well. And the principles of equality, diversity, accessibility and reciprocity underpin all of the work that we do within co-production. And those are incredibly important values for us when we take this work forward. Next slide, please, Simon. This gives a little bit of a picture of how we might involve people in a co-production model. Models do look very different across organisations and across systems. Co-production isn't just for health and social care, it's in lots of areas of work and business as well. But for us, it's about the language we use. So the ownership and understanding and support of co-production by everyone involved. A culture of openness and honesty is absolutely crucial. A commitment to sharing power and decisions with citizens, clear communications in plain English, again, really important, and we bring up this a lot, that having people involved in decision making is quite difficult if they don't understand the language that we're using. And just having a whole culture within the organisation and the system around valuing people and respecting their time, their involvement and their input. Thanks, Simon. Next. So a bit about talking about what the benefits are of co-production. So we know that inclusion of people's lived experience and expertise can really help us to make resources and services more efficient. Actually redesigning services with people can improve accessibility and prevent that issue of having a service that nobody wants to access or they can't access. If we work with them on designing that service, then that can change what it looks like at the end. We have a real opportunity to hear from people who are generally the unheard voices of society. So co-production gives us the resources and the equipment to be able to reach people in their communities who may have gone unheard before, may not use traditional methods of online surveys or feedback mechanisms like complaints and so forth. So reaching those people who are missed in society is really important. It also gives us multiple perspectives on a topic. So we know when working with people that everybody, even if they have exactly the same conditions or they've accessed the same services, they will have very different experiences of those at any one time. And it gives us a breadth of those perspectives. And definitely one thing that we've really found working with people is it can help to increase their own self-worth and confidence. So we're working with people who have existing mental health conditions every day. And we know that just speaking with them and working with them and giving them a place to share their frustrations and share some of the successes of services that they've worked with gives them a real sense of belonging and a new sense of purpose in terms of being able to be heard and be listened to. We know that sometimes when we look at redesigning services, we concentrate on a very narrow sort of definition of what we think services are, but people have needs, and sometimes those services don't meet the needs. So we know people will talk about their social and economic needs, their whole well-being, their physical needs, as well as their mental health needs. And so co-production gives us that opportunity to work with people around their whole person, rather than just one particular condition that they have. Yeah, do you want to do next slide, Simon? Thank you. Great. So what we've done at Possibility People is we've organised lived experience advisory groups. We call them leagues because it's quite a mouthful. And in each of the areas, people can share their own experiences and opinions about mental health services. And we meet once a month, and we also encourage people that are designing, commissioners and staff leads working with mental health, to come along to the lived experience advisory groups and talk about their particular area that they're working on at that point in time. We also support some of our league members to represent the lived experience voice within a strategic meeting. So we have people sitting on various steering groups, work streams. We've had peer support work, steering group representation, eating disorders, complex emotional needs, lots of different work streams where people can give their own opinion and their own feedback of what their experience has been around that area. We always make sure that people's well-being when they're working with us is crucial, and we offer check-ins with people before, during and after meetings. So at the beginning, before they attend any meetings, we will talk to them about what their support needs are so that we can try and meet them the best way that we possibly can. We can also go through the agendas and the papers, which are sometimes very heavy and quite long in terms of unpicking some of the language in the papers and documents, and trying to look at questions that they might want to ask and prepare for the meetings. And then afterwards, we will check in with their wellbeing and their understanding as well, and feed that back to the chairs of the meetings. Also, something we didn't really think about, but it has sort of happened because the group have valued it, is the opportunities for people just to meet together. So mentoring and peer support opportunities have sort of been encouraged just by default, really, of a group of people who were quite isolated before, having this opportunity to meet in a shared space and just share what they've been going through in a safe way. And we also, because we have some in Brighton, we've been working with people for about 18 months. So we have some people that were there at the beginning, and they've now taken on a more mentoring position within the group to then mentor some of the new members that are coming in and work with them around how to access meetings and strategic decision making, which is quite exciting. We also found it was really important. Most of our meetings are online, mostly due to accessibility reasons. And for us, the opportunity to meet with people socially outside of a business meeting was really important. Do you want to move on to the next slide, Simon? Thank you. So far we've set up lived experience advisory groups across East Sussex and Brighton and Hove, and we have another organisation called Capital who are running their scale lived experience advisory groups meetings in West Sussex, and we have really close connections across all of the areas as well. The Scale network has been running in West Sussex, I think, for about 4 or 5 months now, and they include people with lived experience across Sussex as well. We've been doing lots of community outreach. We realise that not everybody wants to come to a strategic meeting or a lived experience advisory group. So it's really important for us to make sure that we go out in our communities and reach community organisations and voluntary groups that are doing such valuable work in their own areas. So we've been trying to connect with them and finding ways of communicating what's going on within the transformation programme and how we can share that with them. And as I said before, we've got lived experience representatives as well. So I'm going to hand over to Red now, who's going to, unfortunately, Millie has been taken down with COVID. So I'm going to pass over to Red, who's going to share Millie's story.
Hello. Yeah. I'm just going to read out what Millie has sent us. Being a League member has been hugely empowering and also positively challenging at the same time. The incredible, enormous support, patience and understanding of what was my situation by the facilitator group setting of the Lived Experience Advisory Group allowed me to have a glimpse to the outside world. I remember our first task was to change our title from Expert by Experience to League, which I found all quite amusing and empowering. We were developing a voice. My world has become small, just the four walls in my flat and detrimental, intrusive thoughts. I simply struggled with all daily activities too. I was suffering from depression associated with the very, very low motivation, anxiety, and recovering from a severe mental illness diagnosis, schizoaffective disorder. I had no confidence and self-esteem. The past trauma got the better of me. From adverse childhood effects and all the other factors surrounding causes of mental illness. As I speak today, I currently no longer struggle with any mental health symptoms. I feel well. On reflection, this has been hugely through my journey through co-production with the League and mental health service transformation teams and the socialization, tremendous support from my community, family and friends. From being voiceless and feeling of being defeated by the world and illness, I developed a voice and felt equipped and empowered to face my life. A glimpse of hope and light at the end of the tunnel. I look forward to the supportive, friendly and understanding League members each month as we discuss the ins and outs of the current mental health services and how we could help shape the service over these past 18 months. On the occasions that I would make an effort to shower, and dress up nicely. Mental health services had become detrimentally too complicated, mainly due to the complex mental health problems currently now facing our communities and fellow service users. From these complex care pathways to gaps in care, a majority of service users have faced too many delays in treatment, hence causing further complications. We started formulating strategies with the support and input of the Transformation of Services Commissioners, healthcare providers, such as principles of care we have developed that underpin care delivery, like no wrong front door in assisting all mental health service users, simple and seamless approaches to care, personalized care delivery, etc. I have especially loved the service user carer involvement in the making out of care plans as it builds up service user confidence in the direction of care. I found enormous hope because as a League member, we were discussing our experiences and how best to make changes in the overall healthcare delivery system to benefit us and fellow service users and our communities. Co-production, engaging with all involved, was and has been a very safe, kind and supportive space. That built a foundation in my confidence to want to change my life, recover, have a voice, and also make a difference. I've been on a recovery skills course with the group treatment service. At the point of joining the League, I felt hopeful so I didn't miss a single session in assistance to manage and or resolve my presenting symptoms. It's been all very challenging, yet positively life-changing journey to recovery. From attending these planned out, progressive, detailed meeting to meeting very passionate and determined commissioners, healthcare providers and fellow service users, online meetings, workshops and in person. It has all been adventurous, taking me out of my comfort zone and hence having the passion and determination to see the transformation of services through. Co-production has been and is fundamental in the planning and implementation of effective mental health services. As service users in the different advisory groups and with the support of the healthcare providers and transformation of services teams, we have and are successfully mapping out strategies which will ideally suit the service user, carers and healthcare providers. we work better connected. As an advisory group, we have positively had the privilege and honour to work with everyone involved in the transformation of mental health services. So that's from Millie.
Hi everyone, I'm Annabelle and I'm an engagement and support officer for the people participation team, and I'm going to speak about how we recruit, train and support our expert by experience or EBEs. So if someone has emailed the participation team about wanting to become an EBE, what we normally do is send the person an expression of interest form, which asks which service they are currently under or have been under, and demographic questions. And someone from the team, usually myself, will then meet with the person on Skype to have what we call a pre-course chat, which really is an opportunity for the person to share with us a little bit about their history and really explore why they want to become an EBE. After we have had the pre-course chat and we've received the relevant registration forms, the individual will be enrolled onto the next cohort of our EBE training, which is in the middle of the page. And these sessions are currently run virtually and are once a week for a total of 4 weeks. And as you can see, each training session is really varied, from content relating to boundaries and safeguarding to more practical training, where we direct EBEs to future roles and teach them how they can apply for these roles and where to find them. EBEs are paid for their contributions in time and travel is reimbursed. And the work EBEs do is really dependent on how much they want to pick up. And in a way, that's the real beauty of opening opportunities to EBEs, because it really provides them with a sense of flexibility and choice, but it also recognises that their insight is invaluable for service improvement as a whole. We do also make sure that our active EBEs' emotional and professional development is supported throughout the work they do in the trust. So as you can see, we offer a reflective practice space that's accompanied by a senior psychologist, and that allows our EBEs to have their own space where they can feed back any concerns they might have to the team, or just simply reflect and connect with other EBEs who might be participating in similar projects. We also offer support through mentoring. So if an EBE is new to the trust, they can request a mentor for additional support if they wish. They don't have to request a mentor, but the option is there for them. And if that is the case, the participation team will match the requesting mentee with a mentor who is typically an experienced EBE themselves. And mentoring in that way is really beneficial for EBEs who are new to the trust and might not have the confidence yet to apply for roles. So having a mentor is an additional person for them that they can reach out to when they are applying for EBE initiatives. And the mentor really is there to offer guidance as someone who indeed has been new to the trust once themselves. And that leads me nicely on to you, Gabe. So I will let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. Yes, I'm Gabriel. I'm currently the volunteer support officer for the trust, but that's not why I was brought in for this chat today. The title there says an EBE shares their experience of how they became involved. So ultimately, I am the volunteer support officer, but I would say, like being an EBE, it's expert by experience. It's not really a career path you plan, is it? Because by implication, it means, and certainly in First Sussex Partnership, that you've had mental health problems, or you're a carer for someone with who's had or has mental health problems. So we come with different backgrounds. Before I was unwell, I had a pretty successful garden design and landscaping practice, but between really most of 2017 up into 2019, I was suffering from mental health problems, and I was an inpatient a number of times with a sort of recurrent depressive disorder. So when you go through this sort of thing, if you can, you get into a period of trying to rebuild yourself. And I was rebuilding myself, having been a busy person before to not having very much. So one of the things I thought about doing was volunteering for the trust for some reason. And I did the training, and then I started my first shift, and then the COVID pandemic came along and everything just stopped like that. And luckily in the training I'd received back then, expert by experience had been part of it, and obviously I didn't know what that was until I did the training as a volunteer, but that's what I started, and everything was online. Like, we were all changing, weren't we, at that time, to learn how to do that in the pandemic. And at the time it suited me actually a lot, because I needed to rebuild really quite slowly and get confidence back up again. So yeah, here we are some years on. I've done an awful lot of EBE work in that time. I completed a part-time MA in sustainable design, and I've now got this role as a volunteer support officer in the trust. So that means I help volunteers in a team separate to EBEs. We have volunteers. And a surprise recent return to design as well, which I thought was well behind me. But I'm now an EBE mentor, and I talk to a lot of EBEs. And one of the things, I was quite scared of being an EBE to start with, but we bring our lived experience to the teams we're working with, which are generally clinical. If you can get involved in a project which is co-production that's discussed earlier, that's great, and I have been involved in that kind of project, but there's more to it than that. I talk to EBEs who are lacking in confidence. We bring all the skills from our previous work and lives, whatever we've done, and I think that is, as well as your lived experience, the clinical teams we work with really benefit from that. So yeah, thanks for that.
Thanks, Simon. Do you want to do next slide? So we just wanted to, I don't know if people will have questions at the end, but we wanted to just recognise some of the challenges with this work. Co-production and working with people with lived experience and carers takes time. It takes a lot of planning, and it does take resources. And we understand that in this day and age, that is very difficult sometimes to make that a priority. It needs to be a meaningful experience for people. So definitely we need to make sure that people are included and not forgotten all the way through a process, and having an opportunity for ongoing involvement as well, rather than just as a one-off experience or a one-off event. So it can be really difficult sometimes for staff that have co-production or service user involvement in their work plans to do this piece of work. Sometimes they may not have the knowledge or the skills or the time to undertake the work that is needed, and that is a challenge, I think, going forward for everybody, and we're more than happy to try and work with people around how we manage that. It has been difficult to ensure a consistency of offer across all the work streams and services. It does really involve sort of timeliness of when we're approached, and people knowing that we're there, that we can offer some help and support around co-production. We need to make sure that people with lived experience sit alongside staff and commissioners in this equal power relationship. And most of that really comes down to good accessibility of meetings and being involved early in the process, and having an understanding that having conversations behind closed doors isn't very helpful. We need to make sure that we involve people and we take them through the documents that we're reading and give them time to understand what it is we're talking about and we're changing as we go along. As I have said this a few times, but making sure that people know what we're doing, good channels of communication and avoiding duplication is always going to be complex. There are lots of us that do this sort of work. It isn't just SPFT and possibility people, and we are trying as much as we can to try and connect, communicate, have regular check-ins and catch-ups around our work. but we need to try and do that better, I think. And I think we all recognise that. So I'm just going to call it out and recognise that that is a challenge. And then something that I'm really thinking about now is, because we've been doing the work for 12 to 18 months in Brighton, is how do we measure and evaluate what we're doing? This is always really complex because a lot of what we do is qualitative, and it is very difficult sometimes to evidence the direct input of service users in co-production and how that has made a difference to a direct change in a service. So sometimes we forget about it because it is complex, but I think it's really important that we recognise that and we try and find a way of measuring things going forward, particularly in the transformation programme. And I'm just going to say again, I think I've done this work for a really long time, but sometimes we can just get co-production fatigue, and we know that we have to do it, but sometimes it's additional to our existing work, and sometimes the people we work with lived experience, we ask too much of them. So we need to constantly review and refresh and think about how we do this work, and it needs to be an ever-changing picture, I think. Thanks, Simon. I'm not really going to go through this because I think you'll get this afterwards. You'll get all my slides, but there's lots of things coming up in terms of workshops. Some of them I'm working with Megan, some of them we're working with Changing Futures, all around co-production, language, different opportunities for people to be involved. And by all means, contact myself, contact Annabelle as well afterwards if you would like us to answer any other questions that aren't answered today. But I will leave us to go over to Q&A so that we can just check if there are any questions.
Thank you, Tasha.
Thanks, Simon.
Thank you, everybody, as well, for sharing your stories. Really, really interesting discussion over the last half an hour. We haven't actually got any questions yet, but if you do want to ask a question to Tasha, to Gabe, to Annabelle, to Lorraine, to Red as well, do feel free to drop them in the Q&A box. We'll just remind you in the meantime that the next webinar for the Community Transformation Programme is next Wednesday. No, it's not next Wednesday, it's next month on Wednesday, the 15th of March at 12 o'clock. And we'll be discussing then developing an all-age eating disorders pathway. So do make sure you're registered for that. So no questions coming through at the moment. How are we doing for time? 5 minutes or so. If you do want to ask any questions, then feel free to drop them in the message box. And we have a question here from someone who's asking, can someone who was a carer outside West Sussex join as an EBE?
Shall I take that? So if you live within Sussex, then I would think that you can definitely join any of our processes, either the leagues or the Partnership Foundation Trust. Annabelle, we might have to answer that in terms of so SPFT, in terms of supporting carers with our lived experience work as well.
Yeah, no, we certainly have carer EBEs. In terms of the location, yes, you know, west, east, Brighton and Hove, your catchment area is fine as long as you're in Sussex. But yeah, we do, and to be honest, we do really encourage carer EBEs. Yeah. We know that they are sometimes harder to access, but again, we always encourage carers as well as service users.
Yeah, similar for us. So we tend to reach out to carers who are in existing organisations. So it might be Care for the Carers organisation or the Carers Centre. So we tend to go to where carers are rather than expect them to come us. But we would always have a conversation about how we can include carers in our work.
It's really useful. I've just seen as well as a couple of participants on the webinar who have raised their hands. If you can submit any questions into the Q&A box, at the bottom of the screen. That will make sure that we can hear what you've got to ask and answer those as best way as possible. Another question's come in here. Do you have any autistic adults as an EBE?
We do in our lived experience advisory groups. I would say probably at least half read, if not more, of our lived experience advisory members have a developmental condition, be it autistic or ADHD or any of the other diagnoses. So absolutely, we can support people in whatever capacity they need to access our meetings.
And a quick question here, just a reminder of the dates of the co-production event.
The conference is on Wednesday, the 15th of March at the Bright Helm in Brighton.
There we go. Okay. Someone's here saying, thank you for such an informative presentation. Really insightful to hear Millie and Lorraine's experiences, and shows a positive impact of the work that you're doing, both in shaping services and empowering the people who use them. So thank you very much for that comment. It's really nice to hear that that's had such an impact. And someone else here saying thank you for the presentations, and to note that all carers organisations across Sussex with carer voice and engagement, and in particularly have a carer engagement policy as well. Quick question here. Would a good example of co-production be asking some of our service users to be involved in the development of a new monitoring and evaluation process?
Yeah, I think it's less about the topic or the thing that you're going to discuss with, and it's more of a way of organising it, if that makes sense. So for me, you could consult about a monitoring evaluation process, or you could inform about it. But the difference with co-production is you would involve people from the very beginning, and they would be instrumental in making the decisions about what's included, what's left out, and how that whole process gets developed. So it's the way of involving people that is slightly different than maybe what we've done before in terms of consultation and engagement.
And a question here is asking, in what ways are EBEs being used in the Community Transformation Project?
So that some of that was in the slides in terms of the lived experience advisory groups are instrumental in working with all of the Community Transformation Programme staff and managers in terms of looking at what gets reviewed, what gets redesigned, how we manage new services, and we are sort of working across the different areas, Brighton and Hove, West Sussex, East Sussex, but also across Sussex-wide transformation as well, because there are lots of things that are discussed that affect the whole of NHS Sussex and not just the local areas. And we're also working with the people participation team, so there are EBEs and people with lived experience sitting on strategic meetings, giving their input into the redesign of the whole mental health sort of area.
Moving on to possibility people, are there any other routes or methods for feedback beyond online groups? Question here, just being mindful of accessibility and how people can contribute.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it was really about trying to make sure we started online because we started during COVID times, and we started when we were all literally locked down in our houses. So it was the only way that we could reach people. As we've come out of that, we've now realised that, well, for over a year now, we've been meeting with people just socially at a local coffee shop, just talking. People can come along and just have a chat with us informally if they just want to be engaged once, or they can meet us every month in person. We also are starting to use social media, so possibility people have a Twitter stream and Instagram and Facebook groups, so people can participate through social media. And we also do outreach at work as well, so our facilitators go out to community groups and voluntary organisations to talk to people about their mental health concerns and how we can feed that back into the transformation programme. Accessibility is really, really important to us. So we're forever trying to find ways of trying to reach people who are outside of the system and can't attend our meetings.
And as well as being tasked with the work streams coming through from the mental health transformation, do the League or SPFT EBEs ever feed back more general but more common issues that they have with any mental health or primary care services?
Yeah, I'm talking a lot. I'm going to let Annabelle. Do you want to answer that as well, Annabelle?
Yes, sorry. We do get feedback from our EBEs. We are constantly putting those type of questions out to our EBEs. I should mention that we do have a working together group, which is a space that we open up to our EBEs, where they can bring topics of discussion that need to be discussed. We're also looking to get feedback on a continual basis from our EBEs. And as I mentioned earlier, we do offer reflective practice spaces for that. So a lot of the time, if an EBE does have an experience that they feel could be a common experience among other EBEs, so that could be to do with primary care services, that can be brought. That's a perfect example of something that could be brought to a reflective practice space, and then that could be fed back to the team.
Okay, brilliant. Conscious of time, I'll just put in one more question. If there is any questions that we haven't covered, by the way, we will be able to cover those at a later date, and we'll get back to you via email. But the final question is, how do the commissioners, the ICB, fit into the work stream?
I mean, they're absolutely crucial. So we're a commissioned service with Brighton and East Sussex, and the same for Scale in West Sussex. So the relationship between us and the commissioners is really integral to the work we do and is very close. So we meet with the commissioners more than sometimes twice a month to try and discuss what the League has been talking about, and also in terms of supporting the commissioners' work as well. So they literally, it's just it's an integral part of our service, working alongside the commissioning teams.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for that. Don't forget, you can follow us on our social media channels at Sussex CMHT and at VCSE MHS Sussex, and also join the conversation using our hashtag there, CMH Transformation Sussex. It's been great to share the experiences with everybody today, and thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you for those personal stories as well from Millie, Red, Gabe, Lorraine, and also to Annabelle and Tasha for their expertise on this. Don't forget to join us next month, 15th of March at the same time, for our next community transformation webinar. And in the meantime, we'll circulate any questions and the slides from today after the session has finished. In the meantime, enjoy your month, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.